Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Okay, let's have a look at the states of the wife. And if you've seen the video on the husband, it will be very similar. Essentially, again, the wife has two states. The first state is she receives. First state is when the wife receives a quarter, and the condition for this is if there are no children of the deceased or son's children, and that goes down as far as necessary, as I'll explain shortly. And the second state is when the wife receives an eighth, and this is when there are children or son's children. So if we draw that out, I can show you exactly what that means. We have X deceased who has a wife, and in this case X doesn't have any children, or at least none that survived him, and he does not have any grandchildren through the son. So we can say that there was a son and daughter. At the time that X passed away, neither son nor daughter survived, and nor were there any children through the son. So none of these survived, and in this case the wife would get 1/4. If there were daughter's children, so daughter had maybe a son and a daughter, or just a son or just a daughter, the wife would still receive an eighth, because these inheritors are part of the Zawul Arham, as I explained in the video on the husband. They do not reduce the wife's share, or neither the husband's share. They only get if there are no Zawul Furud or Asabat. The second situation is when X passes away, leaving a wife, and he has children. So he could have just a son or just a daughter, doesn't make a difference, in which case the wife would receive 1/8. And for example, if they had predeceased and the son had his own children, then again the wife's share would be reduced from a half to an eighth. And this goes down, as I explained in the video on husbands, this goes down the male lineage. So if we said that they had predeceased, and again if there were great grandchildren through son's lineage, then the wife's share would be reduced by an eighth. And the only other point to consider is if X had two wives, then what happens? Do they each get an eighth, or do they share an eighth or a quarter, depending on who's alive? What actually happens is that they share equally the amount. So go back to our table. We can say if more than one wife, then they share the amount. So in the case of there not being any children, they would share the quarter. If there were two wives, they would get an eighth each. 3 wives, a 12th, and so on and so forth. And if there were children or son's children, then they would share an eighth. So they would each get a 16th if there were two wives, and so on and so forth. And the only other point I'd probably important to mention is that when we talk about wife, the, she must be in the nikah of the deceased when he passed away. So a divorced wife who's no longer in the nikah of the deceased does not count, and she wouldn't receive anything. So divorced spouse doesn't get anything. And this counts for husbands and wives doesn't receive a share.